And I was like, why are 4 out of your hotels not on TikTok? And he goes, oh, I don't like TikTok. Well, who cares what you like? It doesn't matter what you like. Like, it's just, and that's the mentality of the industry. It is unbelievable how archaic and like, dude, this isn't Bedrock. You're not Fred Flintstone. Wake up.
Social platforms are going to be the new OTAs.
Whoever owns the moment of intent controls the bookings.
Are we going to get a bubble? There are thousands of hotels with hundreds of rooms that still need to be filled.
We're going to be focused on this independent, cool lifestyle and luxury, but I have to market like a bank.
I think that we can give our 2 cents into the stories that are going on.
Will be in your ears and on your screens every Friday morning.
Let's do it.
Let's roll.
This is the gold, bro. This is the gold.
Gentlemen, we are back for another great episode of This Week in Hospitality. It is fantastic to see you all. Bashar was great last week. Friends, we're going to get into... What was that, Scott?
I said he was. He really was. That was fun.
We got some good feedback. People seem to like him. We're going to strive to bring someone on the show, a guest on the show, once a month or so, listeners. So let us know what you think of Bashar and others if you haven't already. But how's everyone doing? It's been a minute. Let's do a quick round robin. Scott, where in the world are you these days?
I am in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it is not a place that's ever been on my radar, and it's completely blowing me away.
Wow. There's a ton of like innovation happening in Tulsa, right? Isn't there like a ton of development?
It is like ridiculous. I went to a food hall yesterday that was ranked top food hall in the US like 3 years in a row. Like it's unbelievable. We were there filming. When this video comes out, it's going to be unreal. It was so cool.
Has anything like, is your perspective, I don't know, Tulsa, people think like the Midwest, they think behind, they think maybe outdated. How do those thinkings compare to reality from your perspective?
What you went in and out? Can you repeat that?
Oh, did I? Oh, okay.
Yeah. For me.
I go for you guys, Edwin and Ben? Or just curious? No. Okay, cool. No worries. So did your expectations, I think when folks think of the Midwest, Scott, they might think like slower, a little outdated, a little behind. How does that thinking compare to the reality of Tulsa right now?
Yes, I fully agree with that. You don't expect what you're going to get. I think the restaurants are seriously impressive. I think the city has nothing but upside. And for me, as doing what I do, I would rather work with a city that nobody knows anything about versus I was just talking to the GM of the hotel that I'm staying at right now, and this is the property that I'm working with. And I was telling him I would rather market this hotel than a sick property in Miami or New York or Atlanta or LA because everybody knows those properties. Everybody knows those cities. Nobody knows anything about Tulsa.
Yeah.
So you have nothing but upside. It's crazy.
Well said. Well said. Ben, any update from you, man? I was with our friend Tanner this week. Tanner and Melissa, who've built Cypress Resort. Your name came up, of course, as it always does. And they're like, how does Ben just do it all? They're like, I just see Ben everywhere all the time on all the feeds. So how does doing it all feel this week, Ben?
Feels good. I mean, we're really excited about what we're launching, which maybe they talked to you about, the Modern Hospitality Accelerator. And so that's been a big focus as of late, basically boiling down our entire revenue growth system, social content, email, the entire funnel, revenue management side of it into a course and coaching program. So I announced it. Scott and Edwin, sounds like they want to join, but they're not hotel owners. So we gotta figure that piece out. But yeah, we're super excited about it. Talked to Tanner, talked to a bunch of other ones. It's a great way. Like our agency can only work with, hotels that have a certain revenue level. It only makes sense for them at a certain, at the price point that we are. But with MHA, we can help a lot of smaller operators, folks like Tanner, that have amazing properties and amazing potential and could learn a ton from all of our mistakes and things that we've, learned to do well over the years. So that's the big excitement for me.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to hear about it. I'm sure you'll crush it as you do most things. Edwin, you're back in DC. How was your time abroad? And
I am.
What are you up to in DC?
Yeah, and I quickly had to go to Amsterdam
a whirlwind visit to home in Barcelona, and then I just missed you too much, Jack. So I had to
Thank
come
you.
back.
Thank you for coming
come
back.
to DC. You're very welcome.
Middleburg, here we come.
Just a little bit closer to you. But I woke up 4 o'clock this morning, so slightly groggy. So let's see where we take this.
Well, on that happy note, let's get into the news. There's so many stories I want to get through this week, so let's see how many we make it through. But right off the bat, I want to talk about TikTok. TikTok's obviously been in the news for lots of reasons in recent months, but the angle that I think is most interesting is something that's happening in Asia right now. So we've talked for a long time on this show over the last many, many episodes about how the traditional travel funnel has been disrupted, the role that social continues to play in demand creation and discovery. But there is something, I think, happening in Asia right now, which is worth paying attention to. Asia is where TikTok has become the dominant discovery engine for young travelers. So there was a report this week that executives from Red Doors and WeGo, which are travel search engines and OTAs in Asia, point to a reality where social feeds now initiate intent, not search engines or OTAs. Again, we've sort of known that and felt that, but they've got some real data to back this up now. At the same time, AI is increasingly compressing the consideration phase. So roughly 5% of WeGo's traffic is already coming from AI referrals, and those users convert at higher rates. Super interesting there. So folks are using LLMs to discover where they might want to go, and apparently, according to this data, 5% of that traffic is converting faster than other traffic sources from OTAs, direct booking sites, etc. What's changing isn't just where travelers discover travel, but how they actually decide. Consumers are no longer reading hundreds of reviews. They're relying on AI summaries to tell them what matters. Meanwhile, loyalty is under pressure. Red Doors noted that even a dollar price difference across channels is enough to shift the booking behavior, despite strong brand affinity and paid membership programs. The result is a fragmented funnel where inspiration, validation, and transaction are happening across entirely different systems, many of which hotels don't control. Scott, I wanted to go to you here first. Again, we've talked about social being this, the new way in which we all discover where we want to go and perhaps why we want to go there. But if what this data suggests is true and indicative of what we'll see in other markets, traffic coming from these new searches and really new ways of searching, new ways of discovery are converting better and higher than traditional sources. So if you're, a hotel owner, a hotel brand, it might just feel like you have lost even more control. I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you interpret the story and then what advice you'd give to a hotelier that wants to make the most of this moment.
The funnel didn't break. It got hijacked. Hotels are still obsessing over things they control, like websites and emails, while losing the only thing that matters, which is demand creation. That's like optimizing the checkout page of a store that nobody wants to walk into. Like, are you joking? What we're watching right now isn't a shift in marketing. It's a full takeover of how demand is created, shaped, and captured. For years, for decades, hotels believed they were part of a structured funnel. You start with the destination, you move to the brand, then a property, then you book. That entire model, it just doesn't feel outdated. It's irrelevant. The funnel hasn't evolved. It's been ripped apart and rebuilt by the platforms that they have nothing to do with hospitality. TikTok isn't a social platform anymore. It's the front door to travel. It's where intent starts. Even before someone knows they have intent, people aren't sitting there thinking, I need a hotel in Bali. They're scrolling, they see a pool, a vibe, a moment. Suddenly the trip exists in their head. That's not marketing. That's behavioral manipulation at scale. Hotels don't control any of it. The problem is, I talked to a hotel owner. He's part of a group, and they control 6 hotels on the West Coast of the US. And we were just so I used to do a lot with him. Post-pandemic, I do a little bit, but not a great deal. And we had a conversation the other day, and I asked him, I said, before we hopped on the call, I always hop on a call or hop on their social to see when their last post was. Are they active? Are they replying? All the things. And I was like, why are 4 out of your hotels not on TikTok? And he goes, I don't like TikTok. Well, who cares what you like? It doesn't matter what you like. Like it's just, and that's the mentality of the industry. It is unbelievable how archaic and like, dude, this isn't Bedrock. You're not Fred Flintstone. Wake up. You know? So that's my thought. It's incredibly frustrating. But as soon as I get pushback like that, I know that that's not a client I want to work with because it'll be a nightmare. If the pre-conversation is a nightmare and I have to convince you to that social media is important, I'm not in that business anymore. So one more thing.
Yeah.
When I was in investment banking, you know, when you're selling anything, your job is to turn no's into yeses. Your job is to overcome objections. So when I first got in this industry, I was like, dude, I could turn any no into a yes. Like that's my thing. And I did it. But those are always going to come back to be your worst clients. So now I look at this like a marriage, like my mom used to tell me when I was growing up. Fall in love with a girl that loves you more than you love them, and they'll be your wife forever. That's how I look at clients.
So what do you think?
Preach,
right,
baby.
like, I mean, all this, right? Like, yes, but then what do you do, right? Like, and I know what we do. Oh, you got to get on TikTok, whatever. But like, I mean, if what you're saying is true, Scott, which I think it is, and hotels have just lost more and more and more control. What is the antidote? Like, what can we do? What can people do?
You have to get better at demand creation. I mean, I think Scott said it, right? It's like stop optimizing your listing and tweaking your rates and, you know, focusing on search ads that are, you know, whatever. They're high return, but there's a ceiling to how much you can spend because you're only capturing people that are looking for that market. Like you have to learn how to create your own demand. I mean, that's the only way to buck the trend of where everything's going.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a reality series that you run on social. It could be staff content. It could be, UGC, related content. There's so many different ways to skin the cat, but you have to figure out a way to create net new demand and new awareness and new eyeballs that aren't just tied to like, oh, I'm thinking about this destination. What hotel should I stay at? And hotels they're just too stuck in that. So,
yeah.
And can I just say, it all starts with a strategy. These hotels have no strategy. They don't. They have a content calendar, but there's no strategy. That's not a strategy. And hotels, if you're watching, a content calendar is not a strategy. Like I can't say it loud enough. It's ridiculous.
Can demand creation happen at the hotel level though? Like really?
Yes.
Like, but the amount. I mean, just to be totally real,
1,000%.
you can't. Okay.
Look what Ben does.
Yeah.
Look, like
1,000%.
Listen,
there's certain product that is very challenging, and I think that product is going to continue to phase out, over the years. And look, there are commodity stays, and we're going to talk about this with Uber, right? There's commodity stays. You're a corporate traveler. You care about price. You want convenience. You're loyal to a brand. You care about the points. Like that still exists, and that will always exist. And for that, you're optimizing for demand capture, right? But if you're an independent hotel, if you've thought at all about product beyond just convenience and commodity, you should be creating your own demand.
Yeah. So,
but why don't you think it's possible, Zach? I want to dig into this.
I'm not saying I don't think it's possible. Yeah. My question is like, I mean, creating demand, right, requires, quite frankly, a fair amount of resources, right? You're not just trying to capture. It's hard enough to capture existing demand. It's hard enough to compete for existing demand, right? For a lot of these independent operators, let alone creating new demand. Because the reality of the situation is you have to spend a crap ton, maybe not on actual like ad spend, right? But on you've got to hire somebody like one of you guys, right? And or you've got to hire a team in-house, right? To come in, create all this quote unquote awareness stage, super high level content around the destination or around themes that your target traveler might associate with long before they've decided that they want to go to a particular place. Now, I know your hand is raised, Scott, and I want to get to you because I know you're eager to respond. Cool. But the reality of the situation, right, is that I think the number one reason is not that people are lazy. That's maybe number two reason, right? And maybe it's maybe even number three reason. Maybe number two reason is they just don't have the framework, or they don't have the attention span, or quite frankly, like they're financial strategy does not allow them, right, to go anywhere beyond trying to capture demand in the next 3 to 6 months, meaning like betting on a 3-year strategy for a lot of these. Like I talk to a lot of these independent hotel operators every day. They can't think in 3 years. Like they're thinking in 3 months, right? And 6 months. And so just to play devil's advocate here, for the record, I think what you both are saying is 100% right. And that is where things need to move. But can that happen at an individual hotel level, or does this need to happen at a collective level? Do all the independent hotels in Santa Fe need to get together and hire, Ben to go create Santa Fe hotels to go create all the demand, and then they can, mutually share in from some of that demand capture in whatever strategies and techniques, they think make the most sense for them, and that's where competition can happen. But I guess I'm just a little skeptical that the individual hotel, right, has the resources and could even muster up the resources to put together a solid strategy to create net new demand.
So one thing, I think it's wild to me that a lot of hotels, they're happy to spend, whatever, $5-10 a month on PR. They're happy to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes a month on OTA fees, but they're not willing to spend on the number one customer acquisition channel in the world right now, and has been for a number of years. Like that's kind of crazy. And to your point, Zach, it's an ownership problem. I don't blame the operators. I blame the owners. Because the owners are the ones that are driving this whole thing, right? They're the ones looking out at pace 30, 60, 90 days and freaking out if they're not hitting numbers, and freaking out about, oh, you're going to miss budget and you spent more on content this month. Those two things are totally unrelated. You spent money on content this month that's going to impact you in 90, 120, 180 days. It's 100% an ownership problem. Owners need to wake up. The hotel business is changing. It's not, it's not just a high capitally intensive business. You slap a brand on it and you're going to make double-digit returns. That doesn't exist anymore. So you got to wake up. You got to innovate.
Scott, what were you going to say?
It is. So I'm going to give you a real life example. It would be like us getting mad at Edwin right now because the hotels he's operating in DC aren't investing in social media. It's not Edwin's fault. If he doesn't have the budget, it's ownership fault. And you know what I hate? I hate when properties come to me and say, I don't have the budget. I think that 80% of the properties in the world do have the budget. It's allocated the wrong way. With the amount of crap that I see hotels put money in is ridiculous. And until ownership, not GMs, ownership sees what we do and social media as an investment and not a cost, this will never change. And they will continue to lose market share overnight. Now, the problem is when I talk to a property that's killing it, and they're like, oh yeah, I don't need social media. I'm like, you may be killing it today. You might be seriously in the black and still be losing market share little by little overnight. And you don't even feel it. And that's the most dangerous type of market share reduction is when you don't feel it.
The reality of the situation is that until there is I don't think this has to happen at the industry level, but it has to happen maybe at the individual hotel level. Until there is a framework to be able to attribute the impact, right, to dollars, you're just never going to win this battle. Because the reality is what the OTAs have done incredibly well is they've given that framework, right? They're proving that. Now, we all know that they first saw the content for the hotel that Ben put out on Instagram before they ever went to Airbnb or Expedia, right? But there's literally no credit that Ben will ever get for that.
Correct. And until they realize that not every part of what Ben's agency and I do is ROI measurable. Like there is,
what I'm saying
if
is
you're building a brand,
that's where
I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand that, and that's my daily battle. That's our
where
daily
a big
battle.
part of the problem sits.
But they go for PR.
So, but
Yeah, but guys, that's where
I
a
get it.
big part of the problem sits. I was working with 3 hotels, independent, part of a just a small brand, who had 15 people in sales for 3 hotels, and 3 people for marketing, which included social. That's where a lot of these problems sit, because you can't justify, you can't put your finger yet on what your social media strategy is actually bringing to the table. But you could never either with the PR strategy, right? Well, you could, because you could put your visibility out there and it had a market value on it. So we need to justify all these things constantly. And I think until that switch is made, this is not going to change. But
get it.
hotels can do a lot on their own level, right? So what's left of this whole story is just your own narrative. You can create your own SEO for in this sense, right? And you can talk about anything that's happening on your property, which is what hotels really should be doing, because that's what they're good at.
Yeah.
Maybe not yet the storytelling, but hotels are good at delivery. You just need to talk about the delivery.
yeah.
But because
there's
we're
load.
often in the hotel business, we don't like to brag. We like to have other people talk about us. It's difficult, and it's a difficult mindset change.
What were we gonna
There's
say,
a
Ben?
low tech way. There's a low tech way to do this too. I mean, I've talked about it a lot. Like, it's such a cop out to be like, oh, attribution and Google Analytics doesn't tell the full story, because it doesn't. Like, you can ask your guests where they heard about you, right? We talked about
Absolutely.
this. You can ask them in the booking flow, which is my recommendation. I don't think it meaningfully hurts conversions. If you're worried about conversions, have it redirect as soon as they check out online. That's when you have they remember where they heard about you at that point. So it's the highest likelihood they're going to respond, or give them a discount code or some benefit for responding to that. It's a great way to find out where guests are coming from.
Yes.
Agreed.
But we're not there yet, right? So it was 6 months ago, I had a marketing director who said, I don't necessarily like social media. Her words. That's
Probably the wrong
complicated.
marketing director in
They're
2026.
in the wrong position.
That's
also think there's a
complicated
fear.
because there's a much more traditional approach in some of the bigger hotels still to what marketing really is.
Of
And in
course.
that
I
world,
think
that's
there's a
changed.
fear there. There's a fear due to lack of understanding, right?
Correct.
Like, a lot of marketing directors out there, they understand digital. They can sell it easier, like paid strategy, for example, right? They can,
Because you can also prove yourself, right?
yeah.
That's my whole point.
Again,
It comes down to how am I showing the powers that be,
Yes.
whether it be the owner, whether it be the GM, whoever my boss is, that the work I'm doing is actually meaningful, right? And is doing
But good
something.
PR companies are also changing at the moment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're also getting crushed. I mean, PR firms
Exactly.
in general are getting crushed. It's harder and harder to justify that cost.
Yeah.
But right, the good ones that can still land you in the Travel and Leisures and the Condé Nast Travelers and like the affinity publications, right? That owners, quite frankly, do care about their property appearing in. It's easier to justify that cost, right? I think that is fleeting. But the other thing I was going to say about why people will invest in PR, Ben, versus social, is it's way easier. Like, the reality of the situation is there's a lot of work, right, that somebody has to do, right? When you're creating your own content, when you're developing story, when you're engaging with folks on social, it's very, very easy to sit down with Condé Nast or Travel and Leisure for an hour and talk about yourself and talk about your hotel and talk about the things that you care about, and then for them to go and do all the quote unquote work. Like, again, not to say that I agree.
No, I agree. I agree with you.
Your
Right?
10K is
'Cause
much
it's a
better
weekly meeting
invested.
with your PR company.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's the offloading of it. It's the offloading of storytelling, and that's what makes it attractive. Is like, I don't have to do all the hard work. I get to have a trained writer do the work, and then I get to leverage the brand of that trained writer, right? And that's why it's worth the investment. Who cares about how many people actually book from the Travel and Leisure article? Newsflash, it's less than 2% on average. So, but I just think that's probably the why. But I think
that's
I also have
vanity.
to say,
it is
it's-
vanity. It's rooted in vanity.
No. But I think it's a vanity ego thing. I don't think it's because it's easier. Maybe it's easier to identify good PR firms. Maybe that's true. But I think, you want to try to identify a good social media agency, a good, content creator. Show me your latest viral videos and the engagement, right? Like, I mean, I don't think it's not that hard.
Yeah. And then and then we should move on. But like the frontier of like figuring out some of the content that works the best for this like demand generation that we're talking about might be the kind of content that, from an aesthetic perspective, is wildly, different from that of the hotel. And I think that is a really hard thing to get over. And I don't know how you guys get over that, right? For like serious brands, right, who really take every aspect of how they present themselves to the world seriously. Of course, the super polished and well-produced Aman ad will not drive as many bookings, right? Maybe Aman's a bad example, but like an addition, sort of like piece of content as a really cool UGC content creator who knows what they're doing, who knows how to produce great content, will drive. But Edition's never going to let Ben do their content, because the way that Ben creates his content, which is what works to drive bookings, is not integrated with the way that they like to present themselves to the world.
I will say Aman was a great example, because they're a perfect example of, they do things only to build brand. They don't do things to drive sales. All of their marketing is to build brand. Every single thing they do. It's their strategy.
And yes, but that does not work for the vast majority of hotels.
100%. I fully agree. But I think simultaneously you need to do both.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And that is the problem. And again, it's not up to Edwin. It's about the owners.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They look at graphs and sheets and numbers. That's it.
We'll finish up on this story because I know we want to move on, but I think there's also a generational issue here with, this story is about TikTok, right? I mean, the TikTok, the platform itself, doesn't sit yet with all generations. So when it's a foreign object, right, it still sits with a lot of the younger generation. People are just not very well versed in this world yet.
But even though the most active demographic on TikTok today, 2026, end of April, is 38 to 57. It's not 6-year-olds dancing anymore, guys.
I got to get
But that's all they think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the content that works, the way it's done, it is, to everyone's point, it's foreign and it is different. It is a new language. It's a new language, which does not mean
also because it's a full-time job.
And it's And what you need the person that's good at doing the content, who's also really good at articulating the value of it, and who's also really good at understanding how to communicate up the chain, how we're going to measure the success of this, and understanding how that would all fit in 12 months. Person, it's hard. It's really hard to find that kind of a person, I think. Yep. Now,
can I hold on? One more thing. Can I just say that first off, I think that anybody who works on a marketing team and the people in there do not like social media, I think you hired wrong. You cannot train somebody to fall in love with something naturally. And I'm not saying you need influencers on your team, where that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as they're the right fit, but you need the right people. It's one of the things I get asked about a lot. Can you help me train and find and create an infrastructure for my new employees? And I have a feeling that sort of service is going to be big moving forward, because hotels do not know how to hire marketing. Yeah. They don't know.
Yeah. 100%.
Ooh, I see a business model coming up.
I was going to say, Scott,
it's already one of my services.
You got to go.
Already one, and I could see Ben doing it. I can help distribute.
There
you have to think about it the right way. Okay, I know you want to move on.
All right, let's move on. We got a lot more to get through. All right, story number 2 this week. Uber is entering hotel bookings via Expedia, bringing access to more than 700,000 hotels globally, with 300,000 verbal rentals expected to follow soon. The mechanics of the deal of the partnership are pretty straightforward. It's an affiliate style model where Uber and Expedia split commissions. But what's a little bit more interesting here is the why, right? The strategic intent behind this partnership. So this is about embedding travel into an existing high-frequency ecosystem. Uber One subscribers, that's Uber One's premium product, will get 10% back in credits and discounts across a rotating inventory of hotels, positioning travel as a justification for subscription value. The broader ambition is to reduce cognitive overload, which is what both teams are saying. So keeping users inside one interface rather than bouncing across apps to plan and book a trip. For Expedia, this is quite frankly, just incremental distribution. They obviously have massive distribution as it is. But for hotels, it's, kind of this another intermediary layer. It's still the details about exactly how this will work on the hotel operator side seem to be a little ambiguous. I think from what I've been able to read, it will just come in as an Expedia booking. It's not necessarily going to have a via Uber tag on it, at least initially, but we'll see how that changes. Zooming out, I think this reflects a larger shift that travel is no longer just a standalone category. It's becoming a feature inside broader consumer platforms. We talked about the possibility of this happening months ago, and there were a lot of, I think, poo-pooers about whether or not this was like ever going to happen or if this move made sense. Specifically talking about, I think at the time, Uber acquisition of Expedia and or vice versa. So no acquisition, but a pretty interesting partnership here. Ben, I want to go to you first here, man. What did you think about this announcement? Were you surprised? Is this an interesting new channel that folks should be paying attention to? Is there really anything for hotels to do here? What's your take on this development?
I just think it's another example of travel companies trying to own a greater share of the wallet and more of the trip. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Airlines, cruises, Uber, everybody, hotels. We're going to talk about another hotel that's, I guess, launching a jet, right? So, I mean, I think more and more of this is happening. And look, I think Uber originally won by removing friction for a commodity. I don't think leisure hotels are a commodity, ones that you're booking $500 a night. I don't think it's zero friction that's leading you to book that hotel. I do think it works for, like we were just talking about, corporate travel, more commodity stays, last minute stays, corporate travelers that are already, using Uber day in and day out that want to just have it be more convenient and all in one place. I think it can work for that use case. And I'm assuming that's, more of who Uber is targeting with this. So yeah, I think it's smart. I think that they're trying to own more of the trip, and, every travel company out there is trying to do the same thing right now.
I just got back from a trip, and what I will say is, I did not book it through Expedia, but I can imagine a situation where you're at the hotel, right? Expedia wants to build out its like on-trip experience too, so that you're using the app more regularly during your actual stay, and being able to go into the app, the Expedia app, right? Find my reservation number for the hotel, and then also call an Uber directly from that app without having to switch to my Uber app. I mean, that is helping, reduce friction in that sort of experience, which, we've all had. So that to me was the most interesting part of this partnership. Edwin, what did you think, man? Anything stand out to you?
Well, I mean, one thing that stood out immediately is that, who's not going into hotels, right? Airbnb is, now Uber is. So from a confidence perspective in our sector, I mean, this is huge, right? Which is, I think, is good for us hoteliers. People see there's a future, there's growth. It's a strong segment. I'm a bit concerned that we're going to have a few large companies globally who are vying for attention of clients, and that a lot of single hotels are not game for this, right? They're not going to fully understand how to work with this. We were having a conversation this week with hotels in Amsterdam who suddenly saw their Booking.com percentage, booking is huge in Europe, way bigger than here, lose out to Expedia. And we realized Expedia was heavily giving marketing dollars, marketing euros to hotels, but then discounting on discounted rates. And if you don't dig down, you don't see it. And all of a sudden your net rates are hurting. So with all these big companies, now going into partnership deals and splitting percentages, I wonder if this rate parity discussion is going to resurface again. Mm-hmm. Because in our previous story, if you're vying for $1 difference, and if that's loyalty to you, all these genius programs on Booking and all the other programs are, if they're able to show discount rates versus your own direct site, I mean, does rate parity in this new world still make sense? Or is this a fight for who can show the best rate on here? So I'm wondering if that discussion is going to resurface. if this hits off, and if these large companies with such an enormous distribution platform are really all going to utilize hotels as a way of growth.
Yeah, well said. It will certainly be interesting to see if those conversations resurface. I imagine that they will have to. Scott, what do you think, man? Anything to add here?
Yeah, I mean, Uber isn't adding hotels; it's removing friction from travel. Everybody's going to look at this and say Uber's getting into hotels. That's the wrong way to look at it. Uber's not entering travel; it's absorbing it into a system people are already using every single day. And that's much bigger threat than any OTA has ever been. The real power here, it isn't inventory, it's behavior. People open Uber multiple times a week without thinking. I don't own a car. I haven't for many years, and I use Uber almost every day, especially when I'm in between trips. You open up Expedia when you need it. You open up Uber because it's part of your life. Now imagine booking your hotel in the same place that you order your car, earn your rewards, manage your daily movements. That's not a feature, that's a habit shift. And once travel becomes a habit, instead of an event, the entire industry changes. You don't shop around as much. You don't compare as deeply. You don't even think about where you're booking from. You stay inside the ecosystem that's easiest and most comfortable. That's how Uber wins.
Yeah. I also think that this is a play by Expedia to try and maybe re-engage the more affluent traveler, right? Meaning, like, if you've got an Uber One subscription, right, you're paying, I think it's like $10 or $12 a month or something, right? For Uber One right now, you're getting credits. You're able to use your Uber credits and points for Expedia. You're able to use it and transfer it to One Key Cash, right? I mean, for the vast majority of people, and I'm sure this is heavily biased because of our affiliation to the industry here, but there's this known, at least in my world, that you book direct with the hotel, right? Like, everyone wants to do that, right? People in my circles are not booking through Expedia. People still book through Airbnb because it's a far superior product than Vrbo is, and unless you're incredibly astute, you don't realize that some of these operators actually have their own direct booking sites. When you do realize they have their own direct booking sites, most of them are horrible and feel scammy, so people still prefer Airbnb. But that's not true for hotels. So I saw this as like another play of Uber maybe trying to re-engage, Expedia trying to re-engage the upper level of the market. TBD on whether that will work or not. But I think it's a very, very smart move. And I'm curious to see the hotels like that they rotate in and out, because it seemed clear, or it seemed based off of the report here, that it's not going to be Expedia's like full inventory, and they're going to be, and hotels will not always be available on Uber. It'll be like you'll be able to go in and out seasonally. I'm curious of how much control the hotel will have over where they show up, and whether Expedia prioritizes the 4 and 5 star lifestyle sort of properties that they might have, or whether they really do go pretty down market here. Now, 700,000 is a lot of hotels, so it'll probably be a little bit of everything, but really curious to see how they prioritize the hotels that show up in Uber.
And also, what's the data sharing situation?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the first step to someone buying somebody. Is really what it is. It's a test. But it's super intriguing. All right, guys, I want to go to our next story here. So Riyadh Air, we don't always talk about the airline industry, but I thought this story was interesting and worth including, specifically because we got some of the world's best hotel marketers on the pod with us. So a little bit of context for listeners who haven't been following this story as closely. So Riyadh Air is a Saudi airline. It's positioned itself as one of the most digitally ambitious airline startups in decades. The whole premise of Riyadh Air was that they were going to totally rethink air travel, something that every new airline says, right? But the big thing that they told consumers, which I thought was interesting and early followers, is we're going to totally rethink distribution. We're going all in on storytelling. We're going to reimagine the traveler experience from the ground up. They weren't going to have a first class. They were going to go really heavy on the best business class that you've ever seen, and then they'd have economy plus classes that were better than any other economy plus class, etc. So lots and lots and lots and lots of hype. They're supposed to take flights starting later this year. Now, what this Skift Scoop reported was that you actually are able to start booking air travel on Riyadh Air to select markets And the only way to book, or the primary way to book, is through OTAs like Trip.com and Skyscanner. And this is, again, ahead of their formal public launch. They haven't like officially opened up for bookings, but there are some OTAs where you can certainly, according to this article anyways, secure a flight on Riyadh Air. So what's interesting about this story and why I wanted to include it, especially given the conversation we just had, is here's an airline that has literally been built from the ground up. They have just been known everywhere as like the anti-OTA. We're going to command all these great direct bookings. It's going to be amazing. And then before they've even publicly launched, they're available on a bunch of discount OTAs, quite frankly. So I want to go to you here first, Scott, and Ben, I'm sure you want to weigh in. I know it's different, right? It's a totally different business, but how did you read this? Like how I think it comes across, at least in the story, is it's a lot harder to create demand than people think. And the reality of the situation is that they're getting close to that finish line. They're getting close to being publicly available. They're freaking out. So they're showing up on discount OTAs right now.
Yeah, no.
That's at least, I think, one perspective here. Scott, let's go to you first, and then we can round robin.
So it's a perfect example of where the industry gets it wrong. Incredible brand, massive ambition, the right ambition, I might say, strong storytelling. Everything looks right on the surface, but then you look where the tickets are actually being sold, and it tells you everything that you need to know about how this industry really works. You know, for all the talk about brand and content and digital transformation, which I love, the transaction still flows through the same pipes. OTAs, aggregators, existing infrastructure. And that's not because brands don't want control. It's because building distribution at scale is brutally hard, especially when you're coming, I mean, let's face reality, from that kind of region where always has something going on. I mean, I lost 2 deals that I was working on in the Middle East since all this has happened. So, I mean, it's building distribution at scale is brutally hard and incredibly expensive. You know, this is the disconnect. The industry loves to talk about storytelling, which they should, because it's visible and exciting, but storytelling doesn't close the sale. Distribution does. And until brands start treating distribution as core competency instead of a necessary evil, they're going to keep losing margin at the exact moment it matters most. You can own the narrative and still lose the transaction.
So you're thinking this comes down to trust. Like at the end of the day, it's like, love this, great, but
Yeah.
I'm going to go book with Skyscanner as a consumer for my first flight here in case there's an issue. In case this airline doesn't actually pop off, I can go and, complain to Skyscanner and get my money back. Whereas if I book direct with Riyadh, maybe not.
Correct.
That's your
So
take.
I know for sure that Americans think that way.
Yeah.
Americans aren't built to think globally. They're raised like this. They're born like this. And it's very hard to expand. I mean, when I tell an American that's not well-traveled, I go international. I go to Cancun every year. Okay, relax. When I talk to an American and I just mention something random about something that's not mainstream knowledge, it like blows their mind. And that shouldn't be the case because that doesn't happen in other countries.
Yeah.
When you're in other countries, is all you do is talk globally. When you're here, is all you do is talk about other states.
Well, Edwin, what do you think, man?
Listen, I have friends in Saudi. They got their, this is a government funded airline, right?
Yeah.
They're hiring the best of the best of the best people.
Correct.
Everything here is intentional. We keep forgetting, and I looked everywhere online, tried to read as many stories about this. But there's one thing we're forgetting. There's a war going on. And you don't necessarily, in my viewpoint, announce a launch of a new airline. And I have to say, in the stories, it was also highlighted that they have an inventory problem, airplanes with delivery and delays, right? So if you don't have your product ready yet. There's a war going on, so you're going to have a demand problem. Do you then create a party and do a big launch? I mean, I had to open a hotel once. We were ready. It was just before summer. And we knew if we had a big, massive launch party, that the next day and the next month this would fall flat because people were going on holiday. So we postponed the official launch a couple of months later. But I opened reservations because we were ready. And it gave us a really good time to practice and really be good and ready until we were there. So I think in Saudi, everything is intentional. This is purely backed up by the Saudi investment fund. If they have an inventory problem and they can't announce all their airlines yet, and they're ready and they want to test it, right? Because the articles all talked about testing. Then where do you put your inventory on? You put them on OTAs, and they maybe just they might remove that, but at the moment there's just not enough business or enthusiasm to create another airline in a country that is part of the situation that's going on. That's at least my take on this.
Ben, you look like you want to jump in, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's been a lot of talk out of the Saudis about storytelling and social and a lot of money thrown at it. It doesn't mean you're good at it. And I think we've seen this time and again with PIF-funded initiatives. The amount of awareness they get and frankly, the quality of the storytelling to generate that awareness, it just doesn't match up to the dollars being spent. Like they're not getting the value. And frankly, I mean, I think PIF's hurting. I mean, I think this is pretty well known that PIF's hurting. They're pulling out of a lot of the initiatives. I think Live Golf's going under, right? I think they're only, maintaining the ones that they think have staying power and they're actually seeing some ROI from. So the dollars aren't limitless. And I don't know, I don't see the Saudis like discounting unless they feel like they have to kind of keep something afloat. Right. So I don't know. I think this is a signal of a broader issue, and we're going to see a lot less PIF-funded initiatives.
But there's a problem in Saudi going on anyway, right? I mean, this whole NEOM, the new country that was created, I mean, a lot of places are just empty. I think there's a massive intent to become another Dubai or another region full of tourism, but it's just not there yet. So let's see.
Yeah. So in other words, so Ben's take is strategy's not working. Edwin, maybe your take is like, hey, not necessarily bad strategy. It's just there's geopolitical challenges at this exact moment in time.
If I were to launch something now, I wouldn't think this is a good time.
I think what was just interesting about the story was all the hype, all that we're going to do things differently, and then the first ways you can actually buy tickets to board a flight on this new airline is through like the age-old way of doing so, right? And the dichotomy there, right, is just too funny. But yeah, I want to be clear, sign me up. I'd like to go take a flight on Riyadh Air. I think it'll be a really cool experience, but interesting to kind of see. We'll give them a few more months, see how this pans out. Hopefully we can resolve some of the challenges that are currently underway in the Middle East, and maybe there's a big launch party. Maybe they'll fly out this week in hospitality. We'll do a little show from Riyadh Air. I'm all about it. Last story of the week, guys, I want to get to is Minor Hotels to launch a private jet experience. So Minor Hotels is planning to launch a private jet offering under its Anatara brand in the latest example of a broader shift. Travel companies expanding beyond their core category in an effort to own more of the guest journey. Does this sound familiar? Yes, it does. We just talked about Uber is adding hotels. Airlines are bundling experiences. Hotels are moving into transportation tours. Airbnb's moving into hotels and rideshare products as well. So across the board, brands are repositioning themselves not as single service providers, but as what I think the industry is calling experience platforms, what Brian Chesky would call a super app, perhaps. I want to get your thoughts here, Edwin. Were you surprised by this announcement from Minor Hotels? What do you think from a broader perspective is pushing, right, these hotel brands to get into private jet experiences and these Expedias and OTA brands to get into ride sharing? Like, what do you think is the macro, there's probably several, but a macro reason behind this push to go beyond maybe your quote unquote core competency?
Yeah, I mean, if you all remember when Four Seasons launched their own airplane, this was one airplane. You only got on it if you were invited, and it was only for the top tier client of Four Seasons. That was belonging. If you add a private jet and you have a whole bunch of hotels in your brand, is that a hospitality strategy first, or is it a revenue strategy first? If it's to strengthen, your perhaps a bit far-flung resorts and how to get from A to B, a sort of a vertical move, then it may work. I managed a property in the Caribbean for a while, over 10 years ago, and at $2,500 ADRs in high season, I had a big problem because the airplanes that landed on the island went from one island to the other island, and at $2,500 a night, your guests, they sit in business class, and there's only so many business class seats, and if it's full, because half the guests would get off at one island and the other half would continue to the other island, you couldn't fill your rooms because there was no airlift, and that's a problem with a lot of destinations. So it could be real clever but then one airplane, what is it going to do, right? So in my situation, the Caribbean, my clientele came from London and from New York. So you had two areas. If you would add to your own private plane, your private jet, and you'd fly on a daily basis, that could be something where you could add a value on to your product, right? It's there you're actually removing friction, which we just talked about on true luxury, right? If the hotel controls, the villa, the transfer, the yacht, the private terminal, the dining access, I mean, that can become really powerful. But is this removing friction, or is this creating another beautiful looking brochure with an airplane on it? And I think everybody says experience platforms, but I think a lot of people are building distribution platforms, right? Not necessarily these emotional ecosystems, and I think depending on what they want this jet to do or multiple jets to do, I think the real winners will be the ones that create belonging and continuity, and not just cross-selling another product. And I think the more we go into vertical experience add-ons, where we're a core hotel brand, and this may sound really, really, really stupid, but we in the hotel business sometimes struggle to execute breakfast consistently. So adding planes sounds really glamorous, right? But if your core hotel experience weakens, then the entire strategy might collapse. So I think this expansion only works when that center is already really exceptional.
Ben, we see Airbnb going into experiences and to services, right? Services, I think experiences is largely also considered a little bit of a flop. Services is certainly, at least today, considered a major flop. The intent, right, is to become this super app, right? At least that's what people assume based off of how Brian Chesky acts and speaks in interviews. What is driving this desire to become all-in-one ecosystems? Is it just greed? Is it the fact that you got to keep your shareholders, like you got to keep showing shareholders that you're innovating here? Like, how do you think about this maybe broader story where everyone's trying to become the trip app, right? Not just the flight app, not just the stay app, not just the rideshare app, but the trip app.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the big travel companies, the public companies, it's chasing growth for sure. I mean, that's what I think it is. That's where they see the biggest upside in growth beyond what they've been able to do in their core business. For hotels like on Antara, I mean, guests want fully curated worlds. I do think owning more of the trip is smart, whether you're a travel company or a hotel. But jets, air travel, it's one of the riskiest, costliest extensions you can do. One bad flight, the whole brand pays, right? So it's like there's a lot of downside, and I don't know if the upside is commensurate with that. To Edwin's point, I do know some of the destinations they have, and many independent hotels that are in far-flung destinations, they're very hard to get to. Like I know, and I think too, Zach, one of the owners of Nihi, and they just had a massive gut punch to the air ability to get to Rote, their new property. And I just know how that can crush you. So if it's purely, in terms of logistical, creating an option for guests to get to some of these far-flung destinations, I think it could be smart. But boy, getting into the jet and air traffic business seems pretty challenging. If it were me, I'd love to have a partner as opposed to trying to get into that endeavor myself.
Yeah, 100%. Scott, anything else to add to the story?
Yeah. So I think it's incredibly smart. And I'm not sure how many of you know, but Bill Heineke is one of the most successful American entrepreneurs to ever build a business at scale in Thailand. And he was building this brand when I was there. So the root, the core of this brand came out of Thailand. Service is already at an exceptional level. He is not building a fleet of planes. This is not an airline. This is very similar to the luxury, the control the journey play that Four Seasons does, and it's incredibly smart. This is not about minor moving into luxury. It's about control. And if you understand Bill's background, it makes perfect sense. He didn't build minor by thinking like a hotelier. And I will tell you, Google him or look up him on YouTube. There is like a 2.5 hour interview where he walks you through his villa that he lives in Thailand, and he talks about why he relocated to Thailand and how he thinks as a hotelier in this world. It is incredible. It is unbelievable. You know, he's rooms are everywhere, supplies everywhere. You know, differentiation at the product level is getting weaker, not stronger. So what do? You move up and down the value chain. You don't just sell the stay, you start owning the journey. Flights, transfers, experiences, now private aviation, not because it's flashy, not because it's going to add on to the black, but because it gives you more control over the customer relationship and more opportunities to capture revenue, long-term thinking. He does not think in 3 months. He is the type of owner. If you want to get in bed with the owner that thinks like the ownership that we want to work with, this is the guy. Bill Heineke is a freaking genius. But here's where it gets interesting.
Invite him on the pod, man. Let's go.
Yeah. So everyone in the industry is talking about becoming an experience platform, but almost nobody is built to actually execute that. It sounds great in a strategy deck. But operationally, it's complex. It's expensive and easy to get wrong. The risk isn't that it's just failure, it's dilution. You expand too far, too fast, and suddenly your core product suffers.
Yeah. The reality, though, and the bet that all these people I think are making is that it only takes getting it right once for me to always come back.
Correct.
If I can, if it's truly a seamless experience and I can book every aspect of my travel through Uber, and it's just as easy, more or less, right, as booking an Uber is today, I'm probably always booking travel through Uber. So the question becomes, who gets there fastest? Who is it that's going to be able to build this, all-encompassing trip app that allows me the flexibility I want, but makes the purchasing, the booking, every aspect of the on-stay experience as frictionless as possible. And you do it right once, and I'm never leaving. And that's the bets that all these people are making.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, as we close out, let's head to Spice of the Week. We did not have time for Spice of the Week, really, last week. So I want to hear from who wants to go first. Any volunteers? Scott, let's go to you first, man. What is your Spice of the Week?
Hotels are about to become invisible in their own industry. Okay? The industry keeps talking about innovation. And most of that is happening outside of hotels. TikTok is shaping where people go. AI is shaping what they choose. Platforms like Uber are shaping how you book. Hotels are reaching, they're reacting to all of it, but they're not driving any of it. If this continues, hotels don't disappear physically. They disappear from the decision-making process. They become background inventory instead of systems that they don't control. And once that happens, pricing power erodes, brand power weakens, and the only lever left is discounting, which is where we are. The biggest risk to hotels isn't competition from other hotels. It's becoming irrelevant in the moment the traveler actually decides. If you're not part of the decision, you're part of the supply.
Well said. Well said. Ben, hot takes?
Do less but better. So I could think going counter to the do more, expand into more travel segments. Like I understand that argument, but specifically for hotels, And I could argue for Airbnb and some of these other companies as well. Do what you do and do it extremely well. And then if you've nailed that, then expand. Don't start expanding when your core product is deteriorating, right? I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. And I think this applies to a lot of things. It applies to, what is the core identity of your hotel? Have it be very clear, focus on that, have programming, have amenities, have design, all cater to that. Don't just try to check a 1,000-point checklist of the luxury brand standard, right? Just be exceptional at one or a couple of things. And the same holds true for, unique stays developers and landscape hotel developers. I very much believe in build fewer keys, but better, right? Because you have more pricing power, you have more control over, occupancy and inventory. And in my experience, like these smaller experiential hotels, you can drive very high rates and you actually end up having more margin, better margins with less keys than more. Because when you have more keys, you have to start discounting, you have to start, shredding those margins just to fill up and get by. So do less, but better.
Well said. I'll go quickly and then we'll close with you, Edwin. I think Airbnb is watching this Uber and Expedia deal partnership very closely. I think Airbnb actually already owns maybe like 15 or 20% of Turo. You guys know Turo? You guys have used Turo before?
I haven't used it.
I suspect they're going to either buy Turo, like just outright, and they should, and just bring in, and that's how they're going to solve their airport transfer stuff that they've been trying to fiddle with for some time now. And or they'll strike a partnership with someone like Lyft. I don't think that makes a lot of sense for them. I think they're better off buying Turo, sticking like they can enable another revenue stream for their hosts of like, don't just rent your home, like rent your car too, right? And I think that's beneficial to the host, it's beneficial to the traveler. The car stays at the property that, it normally would be at otherwise, right? And I think that there's a lot of that just makes a ton of sense. And if not that, Airbnb is going to they're going to announce some new acquisition soon. Like they've innovated on the product front. The innovations on the product front aren't performing well comparatively to the promises. So I think that they're going to need to use their cash to like stay relevant, quite frankly, to the world. And it's either that they launched their AI search. Have you guys seen it? It's like pretty unimpressive. It's wildly it's wildly simple. Which on the one hand, like helpful. On the other hand, I still find that they're like filtering gives you much, much, much better results. And you don't want that when you launch your AI search. So I've been pretty underwhelmed with their attempt so far there. But I think they'll make an acquisition they should make an acquisition of Turo. If not, it'll be some other acquisition that we hear about in the next couple months. That's my spice of the week. Edwin, let's go.
Hold on. Let me just add on to that. Can I just say I do airport transfers easily 5-10 times a month. And the best company that I've ever and most consistent company that I've ever had airport transfers done with is Blacklane. They're a German-based company, and they are tremendous. That I have never had a bad experience, like ever. They are unbelievable. I think that would be a very, very smart acquisition for Uber. Very smart.
Interesting. Edwin, how about you, sir? Take us home.
Yeah, so we keep talking about these massive brands growing and taking cuts and taking percentages, and hotels and other businesses not necessarily being controlled. So, buying toothpaste and books on Amazon and getting hotels now via Uber apps and ordering restaurants and food from giant apps. So, my take on for this week would be, this is all great. It's very helpful. It removes friction. But think of the little man once in a while. So if you're going to make decisions about where to go, where to buy, what to do, where to shop, where to eat this week, pop into a local little hotel restaurant and spend your money directly with them. If you're going to book a hotel in the next period, look to see if you can get a better deal online directly, and think of the people on the back end, and make a few conscious decisions in the next weeks. That would be my take.
There you
I love
go.
it. We need to enable the little guy, empower the little guy. We rely on these businesses. They're the best businesses. Edwin, Ben, Scott, thank you for joining me for another great conversation on This Week in Hospitality. this week and every week. For everyone tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Hit subscribe, comment, let us know what you like about the show. Let us know what you don't like about the show. Let us know how we can improve it week over week. Let us know what you thought about bringing a guest, Bashar Wali, onto the pod. We're planning to do, again, more of these, maybe once a month or so, but we want to hear from you if you like that change in format or not. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us this week. If any part of today's conversation sparked an idea or helped you think differently about the industry, we'd love to continue the conversation. You can find each of us on LinkedIn, on X, on Instagram, or whatever your preferred social platform of choice is. Links to all of our profiles are in the show notes below. This Week in Hospitality is presented by Journey. Journey is a loyalty platform built specifically for independent boutique hotels and high-touch hospitality brands. Our mission is to give operators the same powerful rewards engine, data intelligence, and guest insights that major chains rely on, without asking them to give up the individuality, the soul, and the story that makes their property so exceptional. At a moment when travelers are craving unique, meaningful experiences and operators are navigating rising OTA costs, fragmented data, and shifting expectations, Journey provides a unified ecosystem that strengthens guest relationships, increases direct bookings, and helps independent properties thrive on their own terms. We're building a global, curated alliance of exceptional hotels, villas, and residences, a network that rewards exploration, empowers individuality, and gives independents the scale that they deserve. If you're an owner or operator of an extraordinary independently owned and operated hotel or residence, and if you want to see whether your property is a fit for the Journey Alliance, you can learn more and apply at alliance.journey.com. All right, friends, we'll see you next Friday. Until then, keep building experiences that are worth remembering.